Welcome to Her Imprint, part of the Impressions Exchange. I'm Denise Gustafson, your host. This podcast celebrates the remarkable women who are transforming the printing industry. We'll explore their journeys, from challenges to triumphs, and share the stories that leave a lasting imprint. Today with me, I have Paula Fargo. She's the owner of Paula Fargo Consulting. So Paula, welcome.
Thank you, Denise.
To get us started, can you tell me a little bit of what you do in your current job as a consultant? And then we'll get into how you got into the industry in the first place.
That sounds good. Although what I do as a consultant, you need to find out what I did prior, which is a print shop for a little over 35 years. And I bought my mother's business in 1991. She started it in 1977. So I was a second generation female owner. And I operated the business until I sold it last February. So it's been almost a year. Now I'm doing consulting for people in the industry, especially geared towards exit strategies. A lot of my cohort is of a similar age and considering selling or retiring. And since I've just been through it, I've been assisting people with how best to prepare for that. I also am assisting people with uh, plan and pricing strategies, also financial accounting and how best to fix up your financials so they make more sense to you. Those are all some of the things that people have been requesting me to do. So I just decided that I would hang up my shingle and be able to do that for them.
Why not? You've just been through it. So you have firsthand experience in going through this. So now you said you bought your mom's print shop. Did you really have a choice to go into print? Is that something you were thinking of when you were growing up and really starting out?
Well, 100% no.
Okay.
Uh, I always was interested in business and I liked money. I liked numbers. I went to college and got an economics degree, undergrad, and then I got my MBA with an economics concentration. And I went to work for financial services industry, which makes sense.
Yeah.
After about a year of that, I realized I'm not cut out for working for someone else. I don't play well in groups and I don't like taking orders from people I didn't consider smarter than myself, which is the arrogance of a 20 something.
Mm.
I just realized it wasn't for me. I liked the work itself, but I didn't like the committees and the inability to make decisions and the lack of accountability. At that point, I went and talked to my mom. I worked at the printing company as the bookkeeper while I was in college. I used to ride my bike to and from classes and the print shop. And she was looking to retire at that point. She was in her early 50s. She just tossed the keys and went off to Florida, and I bought her out over a 10-year period.
Awesome. So economics, business. So obviously a business definitely is something that you're going to be using a lot as the owner of a print shop, but not exactly what you had in mind when you started out.
No, I didn't, but I really do have an entrepreneurial heart, and printing kind of runs in my family. My mom started the printing business with a partner after she and my dad had divorced. I guess I was like maybe 8 or 9 years old. But my dad's family also had print shops in the Philadelphia area. So my grandfather owned a print shop and my uncle worked there. And then my dad worked in the bindery industry. I was always printing adjacent. I just didn't realize I was going to become one myself.
That's interesting. So you had that printing history through generations on from both sides. You couldn't escape it. I'm going to have to tell you that now.
I guess it was predestined. You're right.
It's always interesting because some people, they stumble into it, but other people, it's just that family heritage that comes in. And even though some people might try to avoid it, there's been some women I've talked to that, nope, we're going to go this other way. but for some other reason they come back in and they love it.
Yes, it's true. I did love it. I love the whole industry. I loved being able to actually make a physical thing. It
Mhm.
it's a little weird for me to just be selling my time. I used to be able to say, "Oh, you give me your money and here's this box of stuff just for you." I think it's a really honorable profession. Um, I think First Amendment, freedom of the press is what we do. I think it's so important for literacy and democracy. I'm really proud to have been in that profession my whole career.
Was there a specific point in time, was a turning point that you really decided that this is it, that you made that decision?
That's an interesting question. When I bought the business, I was 27. I got married the following year and had my first child the year after that, and my second child 2 years after that. I'm in my early 30s. I own this business, and I've got
2 kids.
two under two at home. And those years are a fog to me. I just remember being at work and forgetting that I'm a mother, and then coming home and then forgetting I'm a business owner. This huge dichotomy,
Mhm.
but I felt like compartmentalizing was really the only way to be a success at both. If you're at work and you're constantly worrying about your kids and thinking you're a crappy mother, you're not going to be very effective at work. And if you're home trying to spend some time with your kids and you're thinking about all the stuff you left at the office, you're not going to be a great mother. Compartmentalizing really saved me. And I think the turning point came once my youngest went to college. Now I can get something done. You know what I mean? I'm
Mhm.
not being pulled in a bunch of different directions. But I mean that in the best possible way. I love being a mom. But once they were launched, now I can actually do something with my business here rather than just trying to survive and be profitable. Now I can really give it my full attention. And I think that was a turning point for me.
What launched at that point for you?
I guess how great it felt to just be able to concentrate on one thing.
Mhm.
And that was my business. At that point, I was able to become more active in our trade association, which is now NPSOA, and be involved with the listserv and spend more time with my peers and going to conferences and shows. Before, I really never had a chance to do that.
You're limited in some ways
Oh,
because you're
very
fighting with those 2 worlds.
absolutely, but it's by choice.
Mhm.
And I don't regret either one. It's just once they were launched, it was much easier to focus.
Definitely, and it's empty nester syndrome, so instead of renting out their bedrooms, you ended up putting more of your attention and your time back into your business. Instead of maintaining, you now could look at ways to grow and do other
That-
things.
That's exactly right.
One thing that you've probably noticed in your career is that many of your peers are not women.
I've noticed that, yes.
How have you ever felt like you were literally the only woman in the room? How do you deal with that kind of thing?
Yes, it happens frequently. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a contrarian view and
Okay.
say, I loved it. We spend our lives as individuals trying to be unique and have people notice us for our uniqueness. You don't have to work very hard if you're the only woman in a room full of men to be different because you just are. So I never had a problem with that. I always was amused by, I should say, not always, mostly amused by men who underestimate women in the business world.
Mhm.
I usually try to hit that point home as often as possible when they do make the mistake of underestimating a woman in the business world.
You had the educational chops to back up. what you were doing, and you had the time in the printing industry as well. Not like you didn't know your stuff.
It's true. And I was very confident and am very confident in my knowledge in the industry, my understanding of negotiations, of finances, and of equipment, of HR, of management, all those things. And that's how I arm myself when I go out to do battle with people in the industry that want to underestimate women.
And it's interesting that you phrase it that way. You arm yourself to go out for to do battle. Is that really what it's been like?
Sometimes it is. It's over the years, there's certainly been instances of people making assumptions about women in the business world. When I bought my business in 1991, that was a long time ago. The paper salesman used to come into the shop and say, "Can I talk to the owner? Is he in?" To me. And they only did that once because back then it was easier to find another paper house. Bankers did it, equipment manufacturers did it, and from what I hear, some of them still do it now. I have a female friend who owns a shop in the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania area, and she was at Printing United and was basically blown off by an equipment manufacturer, and she made some noise about it, and I'm proud of her for doing so.
Hmm. I remembered seeing that.
We women need to have each other's back and let each other know when there's something happening that shouldn't be. But yeah, there's been instances of that. And sometimes it could be customers that
Hmm.
don't want to deal with a woman. So it's really, it surrounds you, but it's not as dramatic as going off to battle every single day.
How do you handle some of that? Like the instance at a trade show, if somebody ignores you, how do you handle that? Do you just settle that now, or do you just go to their competitor and put your millions there instead?
Um, Sometimes all of the above.
Okay.
The pain has to be felt
Yeah.
for it to make a difference. I might post something to social media. I might message directly through Facebook or something to the company with a complaint. I might ask to talk to the person's supervisor because at big companies, someone always has a supervisor.
Hmm.
Um, I might go to a competitor, and I'm sure I've done that over the years. Whatever's in your arsenal, you got to deploy.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what's unfortunate is what I've seen in some cases at trade shows is that, especially if you're looking like in the commercial print market, there might be a certain not only gender that they're expecting, a male, but they might also be expecting a certain type of attire. Maybe if it's not a suit, it's something, a polo shirt and khakis. It's somebody that might be a little bit dressed up. It's what they figure is that's their person. But when you look at some of these larger shows where you have other markets coming in, maybe they're in cutoffs, maybe they might be in flip flops, but they still could have several $1 million that they want to spend. How do they approach those people too?
I agree. I think that for the amount of money that companies pay to man and attend these trade shows, they could do a much better job of training the people that work them. Much
Hmm.
better.
In some cases, it might be unintentional bias. They don't, that's what they're used to. They don't think anything of it. But yeah, some education might be definitely, we might need just to take a look at.
Yes, definitely.
Now, in terms of inclusive environments, what strategies have you seen that are really effective to foster that kind of an inclusive environment, especially in printing, in a manufacturing, which is, again, as we said, there's a lot of guys there.
It's true. And what I will say is I've always stuck to a merit-based method. Your color, your religion, your sex, it doesn't matter. If you do your job, you're going to be successful working for me. So I would just tell women out there, bring your A game every day. And I'm not saying you have to be better than men. I'm saying you have to be better than everyone
Mhm.
uh, in order to get that merit based advancement. So this goes for anyone in any business, any industry. Just bring your A game every day. Think like an owner. Meet what's expected of you and exceed it if you can. And you're bound to do well. And if you're not, then you're not in a company that values that. And it's up to you to make the move to find a company that does value people that are hard workers, have strong work ethic, and are really good at what they do.
Definitely, that's definitely the case. Now, through your career, you've mentioned that you have friends that are other print shop owners. You have the association as well. How does mentorship and those allies help you to grow in your own career?
That's a really good question. In my career, I had both a man and a woman as mentor. And to me, the sex of the person didn't matter. It's what they were teaching me. But I think the most important thing for both parties, the mentor and the mentee, is that it has to be organic. It can't be forced because it's not going to be effective. Neither person is going to be particularly happy about it. It
They don't
has
want to do it, you can tell.
exactly. So I think the best thing to do is to, if you're looking for someone to be your mentor, to be open to asking for help and developing relationships with people that might be in a position to help you, and also try to help them back as well. It really needs to be a two-way street. I'm not saying that you need to keep a tally of I helped him and now he, it's not like that, but it should be a mutually beneficial, organic relationship with being a mentor and being a mentee.
Mhm. Do you see that kind of relationship happening in the print industry on a regular basis?
I do see it mostly through trade association and PSOA, several hundred members, and there's a very warm feeling between the peers in that organization, and there's a lot of willingness to help one another. So I do see it, and I enjoy especially working with younger women in the industry. They tend to gravitate towards me asking for help just because I'm one of the older statesmen at this point and a woman. So we already have something in common.
Mhm.
And really enjoy helping them when I can.
Now, in terms of those young women, how important is it for them to see women in those leadership positions?
Depends on the woman. Some women know exactly what they want. They're fearless and they're just going to go and get it. Um, Other women don't have that same confidence. And for them, I think important for them to see that a, a woman can be, I'm not even going to say just as effective as a man. I'm going to say more effective than a man because frankly, I think that's the case.
Mhm.
Um, it will make them feel more confident in what they're doing to understand that there are women owners in the industry and they're successful and they're smart and they run really good shops.
Now, you've called yourself an elder statesman in the industry, but now there are some younger women that are coming in, and not only are they dealing with the fact that they're a woman, but in some cases, they're dealing with the fact that they're a young woman,
Mhm.
that ageism, that people might look down on them. Have you seen that? And is there any advice that you could give to some of those younger women that might be dealing with this?
I think about ageism quite a bit, but I'll say that my perspective is from the other side.
Mhm.
I feel that this new generations, millennials and Gen Zers, it's a huge combined generation. And I feel like they have ageism against the older people. Okay, boomer. And I think it's great to have confidence, but discounting the people that came before them, I think will be to their detriment. I see it in the workforce, and I see people of my era. I'm the last year of baby boomers.
Mhm.
We have this humongous store of knowledge, and often people of my cohort are marginalized for being older
Mhm.
and not being a digital native and not understanding complex technical things and all the new information and new technology. I think prejudging anyone based on age or sex or anything else that you can see um, is always extremely dangerous and most likely is going to end up hurting the person that is doing the misjudging.
Mhm.
It needs to be um, judged based on their skills and their knowledge. Um, I think that anyone, an older person, uh, prejudging a younger person because they are young and maybe being dismissive of them, it's going to bite them in the end, literally and figuratively, because they're making a mistake.
Mhm.
So ageism, like sexism, it's just bad business.
It's interesting. It reminds me too of kids and their parents. As kids are growing up, teenager, they know everything. They know everything. Their parents know nothing. But it's not until those kids get older, they get into their 20s and 30s, that they realize, oh, wait, that thing that mom and dad told me, they know a lot of stuff now. It's amazing how that perspective changes as people get older.
You're exactly right. And it's great when you're a parent, when your kid finally says something like that to you. It's gratifying for sure.
I can only imagine. Now, for you, you raised what, two kids, you said?
Daughters,
Two
yes.
daughters. How was it? I know you said you compartmentalize a lot of it, but for you, what was the biggest struggle in dealing with work and home and having those two worlds collide? Because as much as you compartmentalize, I don't think there's a way for you to keep them completely separate.
You're absolutely right. And I'll use the word that everyone uses anymore, and that's boundaries. I didn't realize I was setting them at the time because no one knew what a boundary was. But now that I know what it is, I realize that's what I was doing. I made sure as much as I could that when I was with my girls, I was doing stuff for them and with them. And when I was at work, I knew that they were taken care of and I had an easy mind. But of course, when someone's sick or they get hurt or there's a field trip, whatever it is, there's always something that you're missing. Or if you're seeing that, there's something at work that you're missing.
Mhm.
So it's a struggle for working, I'll say working parents. Traditionally, the mother has had the bulk of the responsibility. And that's how it was with me as well. But I think that's because we're just better at multitasking and being empathetic caretakers to our employees and our children.
Mhm. Yeah, in many ways, those traditional roles of a male or a female, those are still very much alive. And I know a lot of women that I've talked to, that's one thing that they've always struggled with. And then there's the guilt on both sides, the guilt for not being there for some of the stuff your kids are doing, whatever it is. Or at work, you're missing things there, and there's a guilt there as well. And trying to figure out what's the best way to deal with that guilt, and you just, this is what I can do and just move on, or people deal with it in so many different ways.
They do, and a lot of people really struggle with it.
Yeah.
I think that feeling guilt is a drain on your bandwidth that you can't really afford. It's a little self-indulgent, and I think it's a waste of space in your brain. It, if you could turn it off and say, look, I'm doing the best I can, and I'm just going to get on with getting on, then it's probably, I'm not a psychologist, obviously, but I'm sure a lot of people are like, what did she say? But that's how it worked for me.
And honestly, for some people, that might be exactly how they deal with it as well. But I think everybody's a little bit different on how they deal with that and how they address it for themselves. But it's something that, even though a lot of the younger generation, they are more 50-50, there's more co-parenting, there's still that lingering, in some ways, that guilt with women, family versus career, and trying to fight those two.
I agree. I think a lot of young women these days are actually choosing not to have children. And I admire them for knowing themselves and standing up for what they think is important.
Mhm.
So I think that's fine too.
In some ways, I hope that they don't look back later on and then there's the regret.
You could have kids and look back on it and say, wow, I really regret having those kids. You know?
True. I guess it works both ways.
Both ways. And if my kids are listening, I don't feel that way about
No, they were wonderful.
it.
As we're closing, one of my favorite questions that I ask is, knowing what you know now, so your history, starting out in the printing industry, buying your mother's shop, working your way up, and dealing with that now, you've retired, you're consulting, helping other people as they're moving through that same transition. If you were just starting out in this industry now, what advice would you give to yourself?
That's an awesome question. And I'll say that my mother, who owned and operated the business for about 12 or 13 years before I came on board, she was extremely focused on pleasing her clients. And that's how she grew her business, with amazing customer service. Um, she was very protective of her clients and therefore did not participate in any sort of peer activity. She wasn't friends with any of the competitors. She didn't join any trade associations. She didn't want to give away any of her secrets. She was very private and protective about that. And that's all I knew. She was my role model, and I did what she did for about 5 or 6 years. And I was an avid reader of the trade mags, quick printing and everything. And I used to read all the columnists. And one of my favorites was John Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
And he always talked about, was it NEQP then, or
Yes.
was it NEQP? I'm like, wow, I wonder what that is. So I looked into it and I joined it. And then he talked about this listserv. I'm like, what is that? That sounds great. And I joined that. And for me, that was a pivotal moment in how I operated my business. Look at all these people just like me all over the country that are having the same problems that I am, and talk to each other all day, every day. And I realized that was what I needed. And I wish from the time I bought my company, I would have had that resource available. I was such a rugged individualist that I learned it from my mother that I never asked for help. I just figured out how to do it myself. And once I joined NAQP and the listserv, it was like the whole world opened. And I was able to figure so much more stuff out that improved my life and the life of my employees and the clients and everything. So my biggest advice to myself would be ask for help and find your family, find your peers, and leverage that as much as you can. And at the same time, give back, which is what I've been trying to do the last 20 years since I made this discovery. So that's the advice.
And that's actually great advice because, like you said, everybody's dealing with the same thing, but you could be in completely separate areas of the country. But by sharing that knowledge, it rises what they say, what high tide rises all boats or something along those lines. You help each other with the different things that you're going through and you have somebody to lean on.
Exactly. And I know a lot of women in a male dominated manufacturing industry have a lot to prove. And they might think it shows weakness if you have to ask for help, but do it anyway because the only person you're hurting is yourself if you don't ask for help. So ask for help. It's out there.
Yeah, it's all there. It's out there for the taking in some ways,
Exactly.
but you have to be willing to avail yourself of it.
Correct.
Paula, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
I did too, Denise. Thank you for asking such insightful questions.
Thank you for joining us on this journey to celebrate and amplify the voices of women in the printing industry. If you have a story to share or know someone whose journey deserves to be highlighted, we'd love to hear from you. Together, let's continue inspiring and empowering the next generation of leaders. Until next time, keep leaving your imprint. This is Her Imprint. See you soon.